Say Advent time, Advent time. It's time for Advent, 'cause it's Advent time. Oh, Advent tree, Advent doors, oh, Advent doors. I always want what you haven't more. Yep, come over here. Here, kitty, 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 kitty. Good boy. Come here, Jadis. Yeah, sit. You're doing all the tricks to sit. Good boy. Gentle. Good boy. Kittens. Kitty, 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 kitty. There you go, Luca. Here you go, Jadis. Yeah, Jadis is slowly eating her treat because she is tired of being left out, apparently. It only took 20 days or so. So today is the 21st. Yay. And there was much rejoicing. Oh, we've got our first triple.
Oh.
Mustard Gouda.
Oh, guys, what? I mean, these aren't bad cheeses, but there it is in all of its glory.
Thanks.
Yeah, delicious. Oh, I'm gonna last few times.
We're very tired.
Yeah, we are.
All right, have a good talk here between myself and Professor Cat.
He's got his coffee.
He's ready to go.
He's caffeinated.
He's cat-finated. Lambeau's just mauling a shark in the background. This is gonna be a very well put together video.
Yeah, it is.
So for today's Vlogmas video, I wanted to sit down with Dan and just sort of talk through like the meaning of Advent, because this entire Vlogmas we've been opening the Advent calendars that we have, and people all over the place open Advent calendars, and they have all sorts of different types of them. And when we bought the Advent calendars, Dan had asked me, like, do you know what, like, the actual, like, meaning or history of Advent is? And I thought about it for a second and was like, no, I don't. Like, I could not give you even, like, an educated guess that I thought was anything close. And he agreed that he really did not know either. So we wanted to look into it a little bit more, just so we knew, because I think in America especially, the way that we tend to commercialize every holiday possible, it makes it really difficult for a lot of holidays and just a lot of things to remember like the origins and like what the original meaning behind celebrating this thing was. So that's why we wanted to just kind of talk through it. And it worked out great because we borrowed this book from the library. Well, Dan borrowed it from the library. It's Celebrations, the Complete Book of American Holidays.
Which, granted, I mean, American holidays is a loosely fitted term where these are holidays that happen to make them way into the American calendar, but they didn't necessarily come from birthed out of like American celebrations.
Right.
In the same way that we blow stuff up on July 4th. And,
yeah, that's American.
That's American. Yes. It's in the American calendar, but it doesn't make it an American holiday.
Right. So we had gotten this book originally for Thanksgiving because Dan was preaching a message for a community event for Thanksgiving. So he had gotten this book to kind of look up to see what it said, like with history and dates and all that sort of stuff. And we were pleasantly surprised to find that there was a whole section here about Advent. So we both read it. Dan read it a while ago. I think I just read it like a half an hour ago. And basically we just wanted to talk through our thoughts about what like we have learned the origin of Advent was and what it seems to actually be. So I think before reading this, my only experience with Advent was the Advent calendars. And I assumed it had something to do with like building up, maybe not building up the anticipation of Christ's birth, but like it was leading up to that. Like, I knew that was the origin, as far as it had something to do with Christ's birth. It didn't have something to do with Santa Claus. Like, I knew that much. But that's about all the more I knew about it. Like,
Yeah.
I had no idea. I sort of assumed they didn't have, like, little calendars full of chocolate that you opened up in the beginning. But, like, I didn't really know what there was.
You're right. Before reading into Advent, I probably knew the what most people recognize was the more the commercial aspect of it, where it becomes like a custom that you can create several editions of that appeal to different buying demographics. So having Paw Patrol advents and Hot Wheels advents and
Alcohol advents,
right.
yeah.
And I mean, granted, it's the way. I mean, if you pick up any kind of advent and realize that there's some kind of sequence that fits into the calendar leading up to the day of Christmas, you realize, oh, okay, I get what the way that this works, I guess, practically speaking, even if I don't know the meaning behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I, growing up in like the Pentecostal Christian tradition, Advent and celebrating it was never really something that was ever prominent. I knew of the custom of the Advent wreath or the Advent candles, where you light one and burn it down at marked intervals in the Advent calendar, that being symbolic of keeping vigil or watchfulness in anticipation of the Messiah.
Okay.
So, and having that, like, with this Advent wreath being sort of this affixed physical symbol that is more than just marking off days in the calendar, but weaves together symbols of vigilance and also anticipation of the Messiah, and also weaving in the themes of the biblical metaphor of light, and putting all those things together.
Yeah. Which is interesting because I did not, like, growing up, I knew of Advent calendars. I had no idea there was, like, an Advent wreath or Advent candles or anything like that. I had no clue.
Yeah. So, I knew of those things. They were never a part of, like, our family traditions. Why? I don't know. I can ask my parents. But even if they did, would have introduced that tradition and wove that tradition into our family tradition, there's no real assurance that I would have, like, grasped its meaning in the same way that I would have been offered.
Yeah. I think a good place to start as far as, like, the history / like, actual meaning of Advent is, what does Advent mean?
Yes. Oh, do you want to know?
I read it in the book. I don't remember.
Oh, goodness. Oh, you must remember. No, Advent, it's an English derivative of the Latin root that means coming.
Okay.
Yep. Should say so.
Yes. Says so right there. Yep.
Yep. Not that I know.
Adventus.
Yes.
I also found it interesting that, so with the Advent calendars, they always start December 1st and go to December 24th or 25th. But, like, traditionally, Advent, it says, begins on the Sunday nearest November 30th. So it could start several days before the beginning of December, and it goes until midnight Christmas Eve. Which, I guess, the ending point makes sense in my head.
Mm-hmm. But that's the way that it corresponds to what you would say, like, ecclesiastical or church calendar.
Yeah.
The way in which it's operating, I wouldn't say like a different, like, structure of a calendar about when certain things begin, when they end, but that, historically speaking, that it would begin at that moment, the Sunday that's nearest to, and understandably so, to begin some kind of waiting period as it corresponds to a Sunday, it fits particularly because it makes sense as far as the church calendar is concerned to begin something on a Sunday, because that's a logical starting or stopping point to be measuring a period of waiting in these Sabbath weeks of 7 completed time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That you would do that because it's the most fitting starting and stopping point of a calendar.
Okay.
So
that makes sense. Also, I was very surprised by learning that it says right here, at one time Advent was observed by strict fasting.
So similar to Lent.
Yeah, similar to Lent in that fashion. But I was like, I don't think I would have at any point before reading about Advent had guessed that it had anything to do with fasting of any kind, which, if you are not familiar with what fasting is when you abstain from either food entirely or specific foods for a set period of time and replace that time that you would be eating or whatnot or throughout your day with prayer. Is that a fair?
Yeah, that's fair. And it makes it all the more ironic that we've taken our version of this holiday and inverted that principle.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it's like, because now you think Advent and your brain immediately goes to the chocolate calendars or the cheese Advent
or
calendars.
The beer calendar.
Oh yeah.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, can you imagine today's day and age thinking about like, oh, like, what are you doing leading up to Christmas, and being like, I'm fasting a significant amount. And it's like, that's unheard of today.
Well, but maybe this is our time to introduce like the original Advent calendar, where you open up every single thing and there's nothing in them.
Well, right, like there's not nothing in them, but that like the original.
I'm reminded to fast. Fasting today. Open it. Oh, it's fasting today. Ah.
The original Advent calendars, you would open up a little door of, I think, like, the original calendars would look like a house, which a lot of them do still today. Look like a house, and you open up the windows, and each window has like a Bible verse in it, is what like the original ones would be. So they wouldn't have nothing, and they wouldn't have anything physical in them that you could grab out as a little like door prize.
Door prize. That's fine.
Yeah. I thought that was really, really fascinating, because like today, especially in just like Americanized tradition of Advent, like fasting is the like other end of the spectrum for that, and I found that very interesting. Yeah,
and it seems to me that it's really only among like American Catholics there's the last like vestige of celebrating a holiday that most people are aware of, that if you're celebrating it, it actually involves some kind of fasting.
Right.
In which case, I mean, where what a novel theme that you could actually celebrate something by abstaining from it and not indulging yourself.
Right. Yeah.
Very, very not the American way of doing things.
No.
Apparently, one of the earliest historical references that we have to the church calendar celebrating Advent doesn't come until about the late 4th century, around 380 AD, which, granted, the, with, Pentecost and the birth of the early church, it's not as if it came with a church calendar fully formed.
Right.
Where there's, it's a learned thing, or it's a developmental thing, the way in which the church comes to recognize what you call holidays or holy days. Moments or periods, sections of time that are just regarded as sacred because they're the way in which that we understand these moments as being holy, because time belongs to God. So rediscovering afresh those patterns or rhythms or occasions of time that you you make sacred because they're offered to God. Those are sort of things that discovered more than they are actually created. So yeah, Advent, it becomes something that takes shape throughout church history.
Yeah.
It doesn't come fully formed.
Yeah, so it looks like earliest reference to it occurs AD 380.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. But I mean, the most important thing, it seems to me, when it comes to Advent, and that we're reminded of, or actually, it should remind us of a particular aspect or feature that's behind the celebration of Christmas. That if all you had was Christmas, you're just celebrating something that happened in history. A special moment, a special occasion, which is important, to be sure. But what Advent does, or what it reminds us of, is that the coming of Christ, Jesus' birth, is something that its meaning can be in some way measured, or is more tangible, or it's more weighty when you know that what happened was something that you had been waiting for. Whether you're talking about waiting from the period of throughout the close of the Old Testament canon, and this 400 years of silence between Malachi to Matthew, or if you're pressing further and further back, even all the way back to Eve, where from the declaration that the seed of Eve would crush the serpent's head, and that God would bring about salvation in this profound and miraculous way that we've been waiting for and anticipating and longing for, really, since the earliest beginnings of time. And it's maybe you can think about it this way, about how I guess I like to use the analogy when you come to a restaurant and order your favorite thing, and you expect it in a rather timely fashion, and if you get your things instantaneously, you begin to take them for granted, because it's arrived on your schedule. But rather, when something that you've been waiting for and you've been anticipating, and it's been prolonged or more protracted, and you're forced to have to wait longer for something, that by the time that it arrives, you understand it not so much as something that you can take for granted, but it actually is a gift of grace, and that you appreciate it, and that when it does arrive, it satisfies your soul and your life in such a deeper and more profound fashion, because the weight of your anticipation and desire and longing for it is finally satisfied. That its meaning and significance is also deeper. It's weightier, and to that extent, it's all the more fitting that with Advent, that if you're celebrating it with fasting, that it's like, oh, I'm sort of positioning myself in the circumstance of waiting and longing for and desiring something that I actually need in order to survive, in order to live. And so, yeah, Advent reminds us about how the coming of the Messiah was like just pregnant with anticipation and hope and longing that God would bring about salvation, not just for his people, but for all peoples. And the Advent just brings that to our memory.
So a couple of the more I guess, like, traditional customs for celebrating Advent are basically what we've mentioned already. So, like, Advent calendars, wreaths, and candles. And the calendars we talked about already a little bit, being originally like a house where each of the doors was a window. You would open it up and it would have a Bible verse that you meditated on that day. The candles and the wreaths I am, like I had said earlier, far less familiar with. So my only knowledge of those really is like the little blurb that is in this book that I read about, and then whatever Dan knows of them. So the Advent candles, it said, among these is the lighting of a candle on each of the 4 Advent Sundays. Okay, so the Advent candles and Advent wreaths kind of go hand in hand.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And it's not like the way we typically think about wreaths as something you hang on the wall.
Right.
Remember that wreaths used to be something that you could display vertically or horizontally.
Yes.
In this case, it's a horizontal wreath.
Okay.
That. However it's decorated or fashioned, it can be done in a lot of ways.
Okay.
But typically to stabilize the Advent candles themselves.
Mm-hmm. That is essentially all that this book has to say about Advent. I think even just from this little, like, I think it's 2 full pages maybe. It's significantly more information than I knew going into it. So I'm very thankful that we were able to read this. That's also why I wanted to make this video for today's Vlogmas, to just sort of help in case there's anybody that's been watching that also does not know the history of Advent or like what the origins are. I would love to know in the comments if you guys have celebrated Advent in the past more so than just the commercialized Advent calendars, and what those celebrations looked like. Like, growing up, did you light Advent lights, Advent candles, and did you make Advent wreaths? And what was your typical celebrations or traditions surrounding Advent growing up? I would be very interested to know, and I would love to hear stories in the comments if you are willing to share. Yeah, also, we'd love to know if you learned some stuff. If there's anything in this video that you learned that you didn't know going into it, because we love learning new things together.
That's right.
And I got Dan in on a video.
Sucking me in.
I did. I was like, Dan, this is gonna be educational. You'll enjoy it.
Glory.
So we will see you guys in tomorrow's Vlogmas. We are almost done. We only have like 3 more days of Vlogmas, which is crazy. Yeah. So, like I said, I'll see you guys in tomorrow's. Have a great day.